Almost everyone knows someone who seemed destined to succeed. They studied hard, followed the rules, earned good grades, and did everything they were told would lead to a better future. Yet, years later, some of them are thriving, while others quietly wonder why all that effort no longer seems to produce the results they expected. Maybe they didn't learn the wrong lessons. Maybe they're still applying the right lessons in the wrong system. Because the system that rewards you in school is not the same system that rewards you in life. From the moment we enter school, we begin learning a very specific set of rules. Study hard, pay attention, follow instructions, work consistently. If you do those things well, you are rewarded with better grades, recognition, and opportunities to move forward. There is nothing wrong with that system. In fact, it has helped millions of people build discipline, develop knowledge, and prepare for professional careers. The problem begins when many of us unconsciously assume that the same rules continue to govern the rest of our lives. So we keep doing what has always worked. We collect more qualifications. We work longer hours. We wait for our effort to be recognized. And when the results don't match the expectation, it's easy to blame ourselves. Maybe I'm not smart enough. Maybe I'm not working hard enough. Maybe everyone else is simply more talented. But what if none of those explanations are the real reason? What if the frustration so many people experience after leaving school doesn't come from a lack of ability, but from carrying the rules of one system into another that was never designed to reward the same things? That possibility changes the question completely. Instead of asking, why isn't this working? We should first ask, am I still playing by the rules of a game that I've already left? The real issue is not that school failed you, and it's not that the real world is unfair. The real issue is that these are two different systems designed to achieve two different goals. School is built to measure how well you learn. Life is built to measure how much value you create. Those sound similar, but they are fundamentally different. In school, success is often determined by how accurately you can understand, remember, and apply existing knowledge. In life, success is rarely determined by how much you know alone. It's determined by whether what you know solves a problem that other people care enough to reward. That is why two people with the same education can end up living completely different lives. Not because one learned more, but because one learned how to convert knowledge into value. The moment you leave school, the scoreboard changes. And if you don't realize that, you may spend years trying to earn rewards from a system that no longer exists. This is Mind Over System, where we break down the hidden systems and invisible rules that shape economies, power, and ultimately, the choices that influence every one of our lives. Every system has a purpose, and every purpose creates its own definition of success. Think about school for a moment. A teacher may have 30 or 40 students sitting in one classroom. To educate fairly, the school needs a standard way to measure progress. That is why it rewards things that can be observed and compared, understanding the material, following instructions, completing assignments, and performing well on exams. None of this is meaningless. In fact, these are essential skills. Without them, no society could train doctors, engineers, scientists, or countless other professionals. The school system was never designed to create wealth. It was designed to create capable learners. Now compare that to the marketplace. The market doesn't ask how many books you've read. It doesn't ask how many hours you studied. It doesn't even ask how hard you worked. It asks only one question. Did you create something that improves someone else's life enough for them to exchange their time, attention, or money for it? That single question changes everything. Imagine two people who both know how to solve the same problem. One keeps the knowledge to himself. The other turns it into a business, a product, a service, or a solution that thousands of people can use. Who receives the greater reward? Not because one is more intelligent, but because one created more value for other people. This is why knowledge and value are related, but they are not the same thing. Knowledge is what you possess. Value is what other people experience because of what you possess. And life rewards the second far more than the first. The moment you understand this, many things that once seemed unfair begin to make sense. You stop asking why the smartest person in the room isn't always the wealthiest. Because intelligence is measured inside the mind. Value is measured outside of it. They are connected, but they are never identical. The hardest part about changing systems is that no one tells you the rules have changed. When you graduate, you'll leave the classroom, but the mindset that helped you succeed there often stays with you. Without realizing it, many people continue to believe that if they work hard enough, stay patient enough, and keep collecting qualifications, recognition will eventually come. Because that's exactly how the school system worked. You completed the assignment. You passed the exam. You moved to the next level. The relationship between effort and reward was relatively clear. Life is different. The world doesn't automatically reward effort. It rewards outcomes. You can spend months building something that nobody needs. You can work harder than everyone around you and still be overlooked. Not because your effort has no value, but because effort, by itself, creates no value until it solves a problem outside yourself. This is where many people begin to feel frustrated. They aren't lazy. They aren't incompetent. They're simply waiting for rewards from a system that no longer gives them. In school, your job was to prove what you knew. In life, your job is to prove why what you know matters. That is a completely different challenge. The first asks you to meet a standard. The second asks you to create one. And that's why so many capable people feel lost after entering the real world. Not because they stopped learning, but because they never learned that the definition of success had quietly changed. The biggest misconception people carry into adult life is believing that knowledge has value on its own. It doesn't. Knowledge is potential. Value is realized potential. Think about electricity. On its own, electricity isn't useful. Its value appears only when it powers something people need: a hospital, a factory, a home, or the device in your hand. Knowledge works the same way. A brilliant idea locked inside your mind changes nothing. The same idea, transformed into a product, a service, a business, or even a better decision, can change thousands of lives. That is why the market rarely asks, "How much do you know?" Instead, it asks, "What becomes possible because you know it?" This explains why people with similar education often end up in completely different places. Some continue accumulating knowledge, believing that one more degree, one more certificate, or one more course will finally unlock success. Others begin asking a different question. Instead of, "What else should I learn?" they ask, "What problem can I solve better than I could yesterday?" That small shift changes everything. Because every problem solved creates value. Every value created earns trust. And over time, trust becomes opportunity. Opportunity becomes influence. And influence often becomes wealth. Notice what happened. The reward didn't come from knowledge itself. It came from the chain reaction that knowledge created once it entered the real world. This is the rule that governs life after school. Not who knows the most, but who can transform what they know into something that matters to someone else. You can see this pattern almost everywhere once you know what to look for. Companies no longer hire people simply because they have degrees. They ask about portfolios, practical experience, and the ability to solve real problems. Professionals who continuously adapt often outperform those who rely only on past qualifications. Entire industries have been reshaped by technology, forcing millions of people to learn skills that never existed when they were in school. Even within the same organization, promotions rarely go to the person who knows the most facts. They often go to the person who communicates better, leads better, solves bigger problems, or creates greater impact. None of these observations mean that education has become irrelevant. They reveal something far more important. Knowledge still matters, but knowledge alone is no longer enough. The world has become too dynamic, too interconnected, and too competitive to reward information by itself. Instead, it increasingly rewards the ability to apply information in ways that create value for other people. Once you recognize that pattern, the difference between school and life becomes much easier to understand. They are not competing systems. They simply reward different kinds of success. Imagine two classmates who graduate from the same university with similar grades. Both are intelligent. Both are hardworking. Both begin their careers with the same belief. If they continue doing what made them successful in school, their careers will naturally keep moving forward. For the first few years, they do. Both receive good performance reviews. Both earn promotions. But then, something begins to change. One of them keeps focusing on becoming better at completing assigned tasks. The other starts asking different questions. Why does this customer have this problem? Why is this process inefficient? What solution could create more value than what already exists? Gradually, their careers begin to separate. The first becomes increasingly valuable to a specific role. The second becomes increasingly valuable to the organization. Years later, it appears as though one person was simply luckier than the other. But luck wasn't the turning point. The turning point came the moment one of them realized that succeeding in school meant proving competence, while succeeding in life meant creating impact. Both continued learning. The difference was that one kept learning to perform better within the system. The other learned how to improve the system itself. That small shift changed everything. The consequences of misunderstanding this difference go far beyond an individual's career. They shape entire generations. Every time the world changes, the skills that were once enough become less valuable, not because they suddenly became useless, but because the problems society needs solved have changed. Think about how many jobs today require abilities that were barely discussed in classrooms just 20 years ago. Digital communication, data analysis, artificial intelligence, cross-cultural collaboration, creative problem solving. None of these became important because schools failed. They became important because the world evolved faster than any curriculum could. This is why some people feel as if they're running harder every year, yet falling further behind. They're still investing in what the old system rewarded, while the new system has already moved on. History has repeated this pattern many times. Industrial revolutions changed the value of physical labor. The internet changed the value of information. Artificial intelligence is now changing the value of knowledge itself. Each transformation asks the same question in a different form. Can you adapt faster than the system changes? Because in every era, the greatest risk is not starting with fewer advantages. The greatest risk is continuing to play yesterday's game after the rules have already changed. And the longer you mistake one system for another, the more effort you invest into rewards that are becoming increasingly scarce. Perhaps the biggest lesson isn't about school at all. It's about how every system quietly shapes the way we think. For years, you were rewarded for giving the right answers. So naturally, you learn to believe that success comes from knowing more, working harder, and following the path that has already been laid out. There was nothing wrong with learning those lessons. The mistake is believing they are the only lessons you'll ever need. Because the moment you enter the real world, your relationship with knowledge changes. Knowledge is no longer the destination. It becomes the raw material. What truly matters is what you build with it. The people who continue to grow are not always the ones who know the most. They are the ones who recognize when the system has changed and have the humility to change with it. In the end, the greatest risk isn't leaving school without enough knowledge. It's leaving school without realizing that from this point forward, you'll be measured by a completely different scoreboard. If there's one idea worth carrying with you after this, it's this. Don't measure your future by how well you performed in your last system. What made you successful yesterday may still matter, but it may no longer be enough. Instead of asking whether you know enough, begin asking a different question. What does this system actually reward? That single question can change the way you approach your career, your business, your relationships, and even the way you continue learning. Because growth isn't about abandoning everything you've learned. It's about understanding which lessons still serve you and which ones belonged to a game you've already outgrown. Perhaps that's why so many people feel lost, not because they lack intelligence or effort, but because no one ever tells them when the rules have changed. The real challenge isn't learning more. It's learning to recognize when you're solving yesterday's problems in tomorrow's world. So before you ask whether you're working hard enough, ask yourself one question. Are you still trying to win a game that you've already left?